The Accidental Entrepreneur is produced by Beinhacker Law and brought to you through our affiliate relationships with the following sponsors. One of One Productions, the New Jersey-based podcast studio that produces and edits both audio and video podcasts. They sell equipment for the average podcaster and have even created a guesting kit exclusively for our listeners. North Authentic, the conscious hair care marketplace offering the cleanest brands from around the world. The Healthy Place, the e-commerce site with thousands of supplements to help you live a healthier life, along with natural solutions for chronic pain, stress, anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, and much, much more. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services.
And I'd always heard of another term that we use is seller financing, right? That's essentially what we're doing is we're going to the seller and they're financing us. So I had been looking around. I wanted to do apartment syndications. That's really where I was going with this business. I wanted to invest in multifamily.
Right.
And I was I looked at a bunch of deals, for years. And I just never pulled the trigger.
Syndications are like limited partnerships, right? You're the general partner, bringing in people, they're investing in the business, passive to them. You're managing the building.
Correct. 100%. You nailed it. And I was very uncomfortable at that time in my life, not having any real estate experience other than what I read in books or podcasts with, number one, taking my own money, my own hard-earned money and investing it in something that was unknown. And then number two, asking a bunch of other people to do the same thing, invest alongside of me. Just very unsettling, and it froze me.
Yeah.
And it was right around that time where I heard a coach that I ended up hiring, he's still my coach today, talking about how he bought multifamily properties and his own office building using seller financing.
Okay.
No money down, no credit. And I said, I got to find out more about this.
Yeah.
Light switch went off.
Got it.
So I learned about it. And it spoke to me like, one of the things in real estate that I mentioned is like, there's a bunch of different ways that you can become wealthy. You can make $1 million or more.
Right.
But you have to find that lane that speaks to you.
Right. Just makes sense to you.
Yeah.
You understand
and this was it.
The economics of it. You can control it. You limit your risk, because if you don't really understand it, you're just going to lose sleep every night. If it's not really something you're comfortable with. Because there's always risk involved, right? I'm sure you'll talk about deals and things that didn't work out and problems you had, but that's part of the business. But if you limit that and you feel comfortable with it, I agree with you 100%. I think a lot of those guys are like that. They do flips or they do wholesaling or whatever, because it fits in the marketplace they're in. It fits with the context that they have. It's something they're comfortable with. They have access to deals like that.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work, and they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinhacker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode.
Hi, I'm Brian O'Neill. I'm the CEO and founder of BKW Property Solutions here in Chicago. We buy and sell homes using creative financing strategies. And prior to that, I had zero real estate experience. I worked in corporate sales for 25 years. And I'm super excited to be talking to Mitch today on The Accidental Entrepreneur, and really looking forward to the interview.
All right, Brian. So this is exciting because I was on your podcast and now you're coming on my podcast, and I'm going to talk about some stuff. But I think what's really great about, business and being an entrepreneur in your situation specifically, because if people are listening to this, they'll hear it in the opening. You really didn't know real estate. You were in corporate sales, you go into real estate, and we're going to talk about some of the financing strategies and the stuff that you guys do. But, if you're strategic about it and you stick with it, you learn some principles from some people, you too can get started in the real estate business, right?
Yeah, you can. And, like I said, like you heard in the intro there, I had no experience. So I just want to give everyone out there hope that, you don't have to, you don't necessarily have to have a ton of experience. You just need to have some knowledge and then, the courage to kind of to dive in, get in the mud, get dirty.
All right, good. Well, let's go ways back when you got started, where you grew up and your training and then what you did in sales, because I'm sure that prepared you. Sales always prepares you for everything. And then you got into real estate. What made you do it?
It absolutely does. So going back, I spent most of my life in Florida. My whole family's from, I think we talked about this on my show. I'm from the Northeast. So my whole family's from New York. I was born in Brooklyn. We lived in Jersey for a couple of years.
Jersey.
And then like a lot of people, back in the 80s, they moved to Florida,
right.
and that's what we did.
Yeah.
And I spent most of my life in Florida, and then I did the complete opposite of what you're supposed to do. Is I moved from Florida to
North
Chicago,
Pole.
Which is just
basically the North Pole.
I have no answer for that still to this day. But it was for a sales job at the time. It was a company I worked for 17 years, and I was in corporate sales for 25 years. And
were you married at the time, or?
At the time I was not married. I met my wife here, and it's interesting too. I was having a conversation with my son the other day because every winter I say the same thing to him. Like, I can't stay here. I don't know why we live here. Right. He's like, "Why did you come here, Dad?"
Yeah.
And I said, before I answered, he goes, "Was it because you were looking for Mom?"
Right.
And I said,
I told you my wife's from South Florida, right? So about this time of the year, that's exactly what happens. She goes, "Now, why are we living here again?" So, I'm a New Jersey attorney. What do you want from me? So, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
so
Chicago's a great place. It's just cold.
It is, and I really can't tolerate it, but if you can, then it's a great place to live. I have nothing negative to say about the city. It's just, the next couple of months are fairly unpleasant.
Tough, right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was the company? What was the sales job?
Actually, interesting too. I worked for an elevator company. So you can, how's that for a punchline? Elevator salesman turned real estate investor.
There you go.
And I was flying a lot. I was traveling all over North America, Canada, Europe, and I was gone all the time. I was flying 100,000 miles a year. I was missing my son grow up. And it was really starting to eat away at me, especially as he got older and started to voice his opinion about me being gone, right? "Dad, I don't like when you're gone." He would get scared. He'd get nervous. Right. And then I'd come back from these 2 or 3 day trips and he's speaking different. He looks different. He's doing different things. And they do. And that was ultimately the driver for me, where I started to say, okay, look, I only have one son. I'm not going to miss this kid grow up.
Right.
It's got to be something else.
Yeah. Look, if the kid's a year old, in 2 months, he's grown, like 20% of his life. So, it happens fast. Now, on the elevator side, I guess you were dealing with large corporate clients, right? They're elevators for large buildings. You're dealing with developers or large groups, right? And you had to travel around to see them.
All over. And it was mainly, we did a lot of industrial stuff. So it wasn't conventional, like in a hotel or an office building. It was more, like as an example, these big refineries or these big plastics plants or cements plant. They all had these elevators.
Commercial heavy duty lifts.
Heavy duty.
Yeah.
Very remote areas. So I'd have to go to, some very remote places and, mining operations. I spent a lot of time in northern parts of Canada where, you think it's 4 degrees, it's cold. How about minus 40?
Right. That's like the summer.
Yeah, exactly.
So you'd have to fly to a major city and then drive to a lot of these places. You must have been on the road.
I would.
All the time.
Sometimes I'd fly to like a Phoenix, and I'd drive 3 or 4 hours to the middle of nowhere to see a place, and drive back 3 hours. I fly home, and I was maybe there for an hour at the site.
Right. So and you turn around and come back.
Not very productive use of your time.
No, nowadays could you Zoom now? Could they do it on Zoom, or do you have to really see the site?
Yeah, I think you certainly could. It was just you don't have that personal touch, because a lot of these are high ticket sale items, and it's difficult to do that over a Zoom call. Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Okay, so I'm sure that wore through very fast.
It did. I did it for a long time. And, I just got used to it. I was on planes all the time, in hotels. I mean, that movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
that was me. And again, I just knew that there had to be something. I always loved real estate. I always wanted to be in real estate. I just didn't really know where to go. Right.
Right.
And I think one of the mistakes that I made that a lot of newbies make is they look at the entire bucket of real estate. Well, I can do a fix and flip, or I can do some wholesales. I can do, a buy and hold. And unfortunately for me, I looked at all that and I did nothing. I was too distracted. And then I was looking at the stock market and e-commerce, and I did absolutely nothing.
Just like analysis of paralysis, like you didn't know what to do.
I didn't know what to do. And then it wasn't until I got clear, like laser focused on a specific niche. And then that's when things started to change for me and to happen for me. And I've stuck with that niche, since I dove in several years ago.
So you kept your job at first, right? Although you traveled.
I did.
Lot, so
I kept my job. And I had set a goal, I wanted to leave the job within a 2-year period. Because of what I was able to do in real estate in a short amount of time, using some of the strategies that I use with creative financing, I was able to leave that job in 9 months, which is great.
Right.
And I only go on planes now when I take my, my family on vacation, which is limited, with this pandemic here.
Unfortunately. Yeah. Now, you remember what was your first purchase?
Yeah, I do. I do remember the first purchase. So, and it's always scary, right? You don't know what you're doing.
Well, I'm sure it wasn't your first thing you looked at, right?
It was, and I looked for years and years and years of deals, years. And it wasn't until I finally just said, okay, like it's important to know the why. I mean, missing my son grow up propelled me to actually get over myself and just dive in. So the first deal I ever bought was a seller here in the south suburbs of Chicago that was trying to sell her house conventionally. She was having a difficult time conventionally, and that's very common with a lot of the sellers that we work with. So her contract with her realtor expired. Okay. I called her. Her listing agreement expired.
Right.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
And that's when we call, because we don't call when they're actively engaged with them.
And we know what that means. That means that she doesn't owe this person a commission anymore. If she came to you, it would save her some money. So. Right? Exactly. Okay.
100% saves the 5 or 6%. So I called her, left a voicemail. I said, hey, I'm calling your property at 123 Main Street. I'm interested in buying it. And, didn't think anything of it. She called back 2 weeks later and said, hey, I saved your voicemail. And her situation was she had bought another property. She's moving to another condo, couldn't sell this house. She's faced with having to carry 2 housing payments. Right. So I said to her, okay, I can solve that problem for you. The 2 housing payments. And I've been there personally before. So this is it. I like to help people do this. So I cover the housing payment. We agree upon a price. So I basically bought her house on what's referred to as a lease purchase, which is we said
use an occupancy, right? You're just renting it. You're renting it until you close.
We're renting it. The easiest way to explain it is as a delayed cash sale. So I'm going to lease the house from her, and by leasing, I'm simply just paying her mortgage every month direct to the bank and covering any and all expenses that come up with the house. She can go check out and move on to the next house and not have to worry about this one.
Now, direct to the bank is kind of important, right? Because she could take your money, not pay the mortgage, and it can go into foreclosure and lose your money.
Right. That, and then the buyer that I place in the house, I have a fiduciary responsibility to them as well to make sure that there's no liens on this house when they go to buy it. Yeah. Right. So 100%.
Now, how did you find the property? If it wasn't listed anymore, how'd you find the property?
Yeah, we have a lead service that we use that ties to the MLS.
You were using it then?
Okay. I was using it then, and we get triggered. We get notified when they expire, and then we reach out to the sellers and
got it. Okay, that's a good answer. Yeah. Not magic.
It's very, very simple. Okay. There's lots of services that out there that can pull that. Yep.
So this was a standalone house, right?
It's a single family house. Yep.
And you were going to buy it and hold. What was your initial plans? To buy it and hold it and rent it?
Yeah. So no, we work with buyers who are just outside of financeability. Okay.
Got it. So buyers that don't have the best credit and they can't get a mortgage or something.
Can't get a mortgage. They have their credit maybe dinged. Now, we work with people like in the top 1% of that, right? They've been through a divorce.
Because that increases your risk as a real estate investor, right?
Yeah, we want to help, but we don't want people who've been historically terrible at mismanaging their credit. We're looking for folks who have had a life event, significant life event, divorce, death, a medical event, self-employed. I mean, self-employed people get treated. They get taken to the woodshed with the banks,
because they don't have the traditional tax papers to show a bank, because bank doesn't want any risk. They want to lend their money, no risk. They want you to put $500,000 in the bank, and then they'll give you $500,000 for it's like borrowing your own money half the time.
It's madness. Yeah. They get more, they're more qualified than, again, not saying anything about W-2 employees at all, but a lot of the self-employed people I work with are more qualified than W-2 employees. They better get, right, of course. But you're not subject to the rules of the bank subject. The bank's subject to all kinds of federal and state rules that you're not subject to. So it makes it a little bit easier for you. Okay. Exactly.
Okay. So you already kind of had the way you were doing this with your first purchase, like you were buying it, you were lining up a buyer all at the same time.
Right. And here's why I love this model. Okay. I'm basically selling this on a rent to own, right? And I do most of my properties this way. Is I am essentially not a landlord because I'm selling the house on a lease with an option to buy, or a land contract or a contract for deed. It's different in every state, right? Where they are buyers. They're responsible for the property. So they're responsible for the maintenance and the upkeep. So they're not calling me in the middle of the night asking me to fix their toilet.
This is the new party that's buying the property from you.
Correct.
Right. So you're not plumbing out a toilet in the middle of the night.
I have no interest in that. Now I could rent a house. Sure. I mean, I could rent it. I could, that's an exit, but I like the idea of placing a buyer in the home and increases your cash flow because these buyers are everything is there for them except for the loan. So they have the down payment, which they give up front and over the course of the term, and then they're taking care of the property.
And is there a spread between what you're paying on the old mortgage and their lease payment until they close?
There is, and it varies on each house. On this particular one, if I'm doing the numbers correct, I think I'm getting about $1,900 a month in a lease payment from the buyer, and the seller's mortgage payment's about $1,600.
So it's a few $100.
Yeah, which is, we don't put any money down on these houses. So I gave the seller $10.
And the bank's covering that in the payments, taxes and all that stuff. So you don't have to come up with that stuff.
It's an escrowed payment. So I pay the $1,600 I pay every month. We use I have people who help me with that. It goes direct to the bank every month, and we have access to the statement. So we know it's all getting paid.
Okay. All right. Now because obviously I told you, I've met a lot of real estate people. I've had a half a dozen of them on the show. I just talked to somebody the other day again about coming on the show. Everybody has a little bit different angle as to what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they got into it. So what made you kind of dig up this model, find the model, create this model? How'd you learn about it? I don't know.
I definitely learned about it. Okay. And I'd always heard of another term that we use is seller financing, right? That's essentially what we're doing is we're going to the seller and they're financing us. So I had been looking around. I wanted to do apartment syndications. That's really where I was going with this business. I wanted to invest in multifamily. Right. And I was I looked at a bunch of deals, for years. And I just never pulled the trigger.
Syndications are like limited partnerships, right? You're the general partner, bringing in people, they're investing in the business, passive to them. You're managing the building.
Correct. 100%. You nailed it. And I was very uncomfortable at that time in my life, not having any real estate experience other than what I read in books or podcasts, with number one, taking my own money, my own hard-earned money, and investing it in something that was unknown. And then number two, asking a bunch of other people to do the same thing, invest alongside of me. Just very unsettling, and it froze me. Yeah. And it was right around that time where I heard a coach that I ended up hiring. He's still my coach today, talking about how he bought multifamily properties and his own office building using seller financing.
Okay.
No money down, no credit. And I said, I got to find out more about this.
Yeah.
Light switch went off.
Got it.
So I learned about it. And it spoke to me. Like, one of the things in real estate that I mentioned is like, there's a bunch of different ways that you can become wealthy. You can make $1 million or more.
Right.
But you have to find that lane that speaks to you.
Right. Just makes sense to you.
Yeah.
You understand
and
it.
This
you
was
understand
it.
The economics of it. You can control it. You limit your risk, because if you don't really understand it, you're just going to lose sleep every night. If it's not really something you're comfortable with, because there's always risk involved, right? I'm sure you'll talk about deals and things that didn't work out and problems you had, but that's part of the business. But if you limit that and you feel comfortable with it, I agree with you 100%. I think a lot of those guys are like that. They do flips or they do wholesaling or whatever, because it fits in the marketplace they're in. It fits with the context that they have. It's something they're comfortable with. They have access to deals like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that would just be my advice to anyone, at least in the beginning.
Yeah.
Is just pick a lane, focus on it, put the blinders on, and just really try to focus on that for 3 years. And then maybe as you move along and you get versed in your business and you can build it, and you put these great systems in place and you have a team, maybe you can look at some of these other things that are going on. Like I've invested in apartment syndications. I'm the investor. So I'm the guy
you're a
that
passive investor, right?
I'm passive now, right? But ultimately that's something I can still do. And now I have this skill where I can go to those same sellers that I was trying to buy from conventionally, and I can get them I know how to talk to them about getting them to be the bank. I don't need to go to the bank. I can have them finance me.
Right. So in that deal, you're not paying the seller any money. You're basically not wholesaling the deal, but you're basically bringing in the buyer. It's the buyer who ultimately gets the financing, buys the house, and you're making some money in between the deal.
Correct.
They're paying you, you're paying them, kind of.
I am in the middle on that one. Now there's other scenarios where, what if somebody doesn't have a loan? They own their house free and clear. Well, now I'm the buyer. I can buy their house on owner financing and get the title to the house.
And they can just take payments from you.
Give them a monthly payment, transfer the deed, and then a term, a balloon. Like some sellers will go 15 or 20 years because they don't need or want all the money right now. And they look at it as annuity. And for tax purposes and estate planning purposes, it makes sense for them in their situation.
Right.
35 to 40% of all homes in North America are owned free and clear.
Okay. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what if the deal, like the first deal you were doing, right? You brought a buyer in. You obviously just got started, so it wasn't like you have a big portfolio or whatever. What happens if this person can't qualify and can't close the deal and he's living in the house already and he's making payments to you? Then what do you do?
Yeah. And that's going to happen in this business, even if you vet and screen. And we run them through a pretty rigorous process to make sure that they can qualify for a loan in a certain period of time. But hey, life happens, especially with COVID, people lose their jobs,
Absolutely.
So that represents probably about 5%. We have about a 5 to 10% loss rate, which I can live with that.
Sounds
right?
Good. Yeah.
So one of the things that protects us is our buyers are giving down deposits. So this isn't, a $500 lease option fee that they provide up front and then pay a lease payment. They're giving anywhere from 3 to 10% or more of the purchase
down
price
payment on the purchase up front.
So if
they have no cash, they're not a customer for you.
It's not for them. It's not for them. And that's okay. Right.
Yeah.
So there's skin in the game. So they want to get to the finish line. And that's when you have a buyer versus a renter, someone who's got the skin in the game. And we want to get them to the loan. Because again, my agreement with the seller, like I'm guaranteeing that. So if I tell the seller I'm cashing her out in 48 months,
you got to do it.
I'm doing it rain or shine. Like it doesn't, if the buyer defaults, I can't go back to her and be like, hey, sorry, just kidding. Right. Like I still gotta, I gotta cash her out. So
now does the buyer lose his deposit?
It's non-refundable in most cases. Like if they don't do what they're supposed to do, like if they get out of credit repair or if they leave, or if they default, like simply don't pay, don't pay the rent. But again, That's a very, very low percentage.
That's good.
I do have someone that I'm running through the eviction process. Unfortunately, it does happen.
Yeah.
Even if you check all the boxes, life still happens.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a deal I was the attorney on. So the guy selling the property, I think it was either in foreclosure or pending foreclosure, and there was some equity and they want to get rid of the house. The buyer comes in, and I knew the lawyer, and it was delayed, and they were coming from another state. And he says, listen, can my client move in on a use and occupancy? The property was empty. They're good people, whatever. Turns out that the people moved in, and the title work comes in, and the husband, or maybe both of them, had a $22 million securities judgment against them, some sort of fraud in like Georgia. And I guess they figured it wouldn't follow them, but obviously did. They docketed it, whatever. And now these people are there, they wouldn't leave, and we had to go to court, and they represented themselves. And it was just like a circus. It was a circus. They would leave messages screaming and yelling and cursing. I don't know who this judge is. And you people running like a circus over. And it was crazy. We played for the judge. It was nuts. And we finally got the attorney. I know he's so apologetic. Yeah. And we finally got him out, but it probably cost the guy $20,000 just to get him out of the house, Yeah.
Yeah. It's not fun. You can't make this stuff up either,
No, these people, they're like looking to get you. There's one of those people, they know how to work the system. They had done it before. And and sometimes look, if you're going to play in traffic, you're just going to get hit at some point.
It's part of the deal. Right. I mean, that used to scare me. It doesn't anymore. I just accept it. Like it's going to happen again.
Of course. And so this was the first purchase was in what year? What first deal you did?
That was 19.
Okay. So it was only really a couple of years ago. And of course,
2 years ago. Yeah. It hasn't been a long time. No.
And you were still working at that point.
I was still working, and then, COVID comes, and, it was actually, even though it was a terrible time for a lot of people, and it still is, it was the way that we buy. It was a great opportunity for me and my business and the people that we can help, because people, if you remember, March of 2020, like half the world froze, or more than half the world, and you realtors couldn't show houses. Nobody could do anything. And, we didn't stop. We pretty much doubled down.
Kept doing deals.
Kept doing deals. We did a lot because, again, there was so much uncertainty, and people were, had to still do their thing. They had to move, they had to relocate. And now, all these people are not, the buyers just went away, right? Nobody's buying houses. People are taking the house off the market. You can't show it. So there was just so much chaos. And I remember my coach just said, hey, look, you cannot freeze. This is an opportunity of a lifetime right now. And you have a bunch of people you can help. And that's exactly what happened.
Now, how did you find the buyers? If it was difficult for the people to find the buyers, how did you find them?
So you have to look at the folks that I work with, right? So in a conventional sale, and this is true. You ask a mortgage broker how many applications they take in and how many they actually close. It's like 25%, right? Okay.
For a good guy.
Yeah. So it's roughly 25 to 25% of the market can qualify for a loan, the buyer market.
Meaning you get 100 applications, 25 of them are going to go through.
As a general rule of thumb, right?
Okay.
So as a seller, you are missing 75% of the market.
Because they can't qualify.
They're self-employed. They have credit. Some of them are,
some of them are junk. Right. Exactly.
They'll never qualify. Right.
Right.
But that's the pond that I live in. So I have access to those people who are, what was happening with COVID too, with a lot of business owners, they stopped writing jumbo loans. If you remember that.
That's jumbo's over 700, something roughly.
It depends on the state you're in.
Okay. I think it's 675 here. Yeah.
Yeah. Depends on the state. Every state's different. California's higher, Jersey's higher because the values are higher. But over that amount, they stopped writing them. Yeah. The big banks said, we're not doing it anymore. But you had all these buyers who had the ability to do it. So I remember I was getting a lot of houses under agreement that were north of that jumbo number because there were no buyers. There were no loans available.
Right. They had a down payment, but they couldn't get a loan for the balance.
No. Yeah. So we call them sideline buyers, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So that was, again, you have a limited pool already to begin with. And that's the pond that I fish in. I can bring these buyers to the table. I work with these buyers. So there's so many people who are looking to go from renting to purchasing. So on a house that's in the, low 300s, that's like a perfect ideal situation for our buyers because it's affordable, right? And they're not trying to bite off more than they can chew.
Yeah, you're not doing
so
this
a lot
with
of the
$1.5 million houses.
I could, it just doesn't, it's not
it's harder to find the buyers, a harder market, bigger payments, everything as the risk goes up, right?
It's not my lane, right? Yeah. So I typically stick within a $200,000 to $500,000 zone. That works really well for the sellers and the buyers.
Now, do you network with a lot of mortgage brokers for that reason? Because they get people that don't qualify and they need to place them somewhere.
I do for I need brokers who can help get the loan, help my buyers get the loan
when they ultimately close.
When they ultimately close.
Right.
I mean, I don't have enough houses, and I don't think I ever will for the buyers that are out there. I have just people waiting on the bench for the next house to come up. Right.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah, it's just because of how many there are. So there's a lot of folks who need this type of program, to get them into the house that they want. They want to buy. They just can't right now, whether, again, it's a credit issue that's all fixable. I mean, you can fix credit in 6 months if you do the right things.
Right.
And then if you're self-employed, it's just seasoning. So that's 12 months or 2 years, depending on, where you are in the process. A lot of people who move, if I switch jobs and move, the banks don't like that. They want to see, half a year of pay stubs or whatever. So that they get eliminated from the process.
What happens if you had to short sell a house because you were underwater, like in 2008? I had tons of clients doing that. And then you're no good for, at that time, 4 years. Maybe it's shorter now, but.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we can stave that off with the way that we buy houses. I've prevented short sales. I prevented foreclosures by the way that we can buy. And most people just don't know there's another alternative. Hey, I can't afford my mortgage payments. I have no equity. I have to leave. I'm just giving the house back. There's another way to do it.
Here's a word from our sponsors. Looking to get into podcasting? Maybe to market your business for your own enjoyment or because you have a message you want to get out there. One of One Productions is a New Jersey-based studio just over the George Washington Bridge that caters to the booming business of podcasting. They offer a comfortable atmosphere using the latest technology available to record your podcast. And they are a full-service media company offering both audio and video production services, creating both audio and video podcasts as well as video shorts for business and personal use. Professional audio equipment packages are available through their website for all budgets. And be sure to check out their podcast guesting kit, created specially for our listeners. Care for your health, care for the planet, and look flippin' great doing it. North Authentic is a conscious hair care marketplace offering the cleanest brands from around the world. Their pro stylists curate only the most fabulous non-toxic hair products with better-for-you shampoos, serums, masks, and more that actually give you gorgeous hair without hurting your health or the planet. Hey, you've only got one life, one planet, and one glorious mane. Might as well treat them all as best you can, right? Try a 100% clean hair care routine prescribed just for you using their link in the show notes. If you don't see a big, beautiful difference in how your hair looks and feels, you can tell them they're crazy. Do you battle chronic pain, stress, anxiety, or depression? Well, if you take any supplements or you're interested in natural alternatives, you need to know about FindYourHealthyPlace.com. Find Your Healthy Place has thousands of supplements to help you live a better quality of life, as well as natural solutions for chronic pain, stress, anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, and much, much more. Need guidance? Use their live chat feature and talk to a wellness consultant right on their website. And be sure to use our coupon code TAEPodcast for all your purchases to get the best prices at FindYourHealthyPlace.com. Follow their links in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show. Now, what does your portfolio kind of look like right now? Because if you're obviously buying and selling, you're not really building a lot of passive income. So what does it look like now?
Yeah, it's and that's, so what we're focusing on. So that one particular deal, that first deal, I had a shorter term on that one, right? So what we're really looking at, like what we refer to our avatar, like our ideal seller,
your
is someone who's
profile, right?
Someone's a little bit of pain, or someone who maybe owns their house free and clear, and I can get a long-term financing situation going on. So I have a seller here that we're about to do something with his house. He owes essentially what the house is worth. So if he sold it conventionally, after he pays his closing costs, he pays his realtor, he's either getting a very small amount of money at the closing table or he's writing a check.
Got it.
Which is just crazy. You don't have to do that.
Right.
So I can buy his house for what he owes. I can buy it for exactly what his loan balance is. I make his monthly payments. His loan stays in place. Then there's nothing illegal about this. We do this all the time. I can buy it for what he owes, transfer the title. Now I own the house. The loan stays in place and I make the payments indefinitely. Now, because I have the title, I can do whatever I want with the house.
Now, doesn't that technically accelerate the loan because you're transferring ownership?
So due on sale clause. Exactly. Yeah, we talk a lot about the due on sale clause. It's something that we get all the time. So banks are not in the business of calling loans due. They're in the business.
They want their loans to stay on the books. They want them to be, it affects their ratios. It affects their what do they call it? Their reserve rates, right? Mm-hmm. They don't like, it doesn't work well for them.
Right. They want to collect interest, right? So as long as the payments are getting made, I've never had that happen. Now, could they call it due?
They could.
100%. Do we have contingencies for that? Yes, we do. We protect the seller. And then we protect, we obviously protect ourselves as well, because we don't want that to happen. So while it is a standard clause in the agreement, I've never seen it happen. But it absolutely could. There's certainly a risk there. At the same time, we put the proper contingencies in place to make sure that if it does happen, the seller is protected.
Well, I mean, the bank's collateral position hasn't really changed. The property is still collateral. The person's still liable on the mortgage personally. Mm-hmm. They now have somebody paying for it for them, which is better. Probably improves the bank's position.
The payments are coming in. And if that's ever an issue too, there's different ways to structure it. I can do a contract for deed where the deed stays in escrow and still do a 20 or a 30-year term. Title doesn't transfer. So it's basically
like a sale pending for 30 years or some 20 years.
Yeah, it's like an installment sale. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can get creative with. The point of it being is that we control the house, and then I can go to someone who will never qualify for a loan, maybe a self-employed person or someone who's in an all cash business, and I can finance them. Like I can actually give them the opportunity to be bankable. So that's really the strategy that we're looking for, so that we can keep more of these properties on a long-term basis and not have to continually turn them over every 3, 4, 5 years.
Right. So now, do you have properties over the years that you've kept? You're like, you know what, I like this one, I'm going to keep it and rent it, or not yet?
Yeah, and I really wouldn't. I don't like to rent because especially here,
you don't want to be a landlord.
The landlord laws are tough here.
Yeah, New Jersey's the same way. Very tenant favorable.
Yeah. And it doesn't, again, we're trying to go with right fit clients, which is we can help people who are just outside of financeability, who really want to provide for their family and get into a house, and we have the ability to do that. So it's just become this. We can do it. So let's do it. I could rent them. Absolutely. Now, if I lost a buyer and I own the house, I could rent it, but I'd rather do this.
You have a strategy and you're sticking with it. Now, have you thought about, do you have long-term plans to expand outside of what you're doing? Because you did say, look, there's a lot of things you can do in real estate. You should pick your lane. And then as you grow, maybe you can branch out. You have any strategic plans to?
I do. What ends up happening, Mitch, is that when you start talking to sellers on a daily basis, and that's what we do on a daily basis. I have a team. We're talking to people. They own other stuff, right? So they own strip malls, and they own warehouses, and they own apartment buildings. And I'm talking to a guy right now. I called him about one of his houses, and he owns 6 different rental properties, free and clear, no debt.
Right.
And we're talking about doing something on seller financing. I got another guy who has 15 rental houses.
Wow.
No debt.
Right. And you're building a rapport with him.
Yeah. And it's just a matter of, so those are the types of things that if we structure them the right way, I can pass that on to my kid. But you talk to folks who own a bunch of different stuff, right? And they ask you, hey, would you be interested in this? Like, well, it's not really what I do, but yeah, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
So I might own a strip mall here at some point. Who knows?
So now what does your company look like now? Like when you got started, I guess it was just you, right? Well, what does it look like now? It's mostly virtual.
So when I did start, it was just me. My wife helped me a little bit, especially with some of the admin stuff and some of the marketing. Now I have a team of 5. So, you fast forward and, I've got an assistant, I've got people who are calling, I have admin, and I'm looking to add a couple more people this year because we're just getting bigger and bigger. I have the podcast. We're really dedicated to growing that. And then, expand. There's enough houses here in the Chicagoland area, Mitch, for me, but I'm looking to just kind of spread it out to maybe a little bit more rural areas where the taxes aren't so ridiculous.
Okay.
Because it can kind
of in your sphere of influence. You're not going to Nashville or Atlanta or Austin or whatever, right?
Yeah. Staying in the same state, maybe jump into Indiana because it's only 45 minutes from the border from where I live, Indiana.
Right. So what kind of advice, maybe we could talk about some things that you feel you could do differently or you've learned. If somebody's looking to get into real estate, they hate their job, they're not sure if they want to start a business and they're like, yeah, they like real estate. What kind of advice do you have for people that might?
The first thing I would say is you really have to explore why it is that you want to get out of the current situation that you're in. If I knew that I wanted to, but I never really took the time to write it out and, get it all out, right? Like, why is it that I don't want to do this anymore? So that's an important exercise. If you don't have a strong why, you're probably just going to be stuck in your current situation. And it wasn't until I did that. It was my son. It was my family. I was away. Right. That's what ultimately drove me.
Right.
So that would be step one. And then I would say beyond that is I keep talking about pick a lane. Like I was so distracted by all these different things, stocks, e-commerce, real estate. It was like the next shiny object syndrome. We know what that is.
Yeah.
You really have to focus, find what speaks to you. And if that takes you, a year, 18 months to read a bunch of books and do research, so be it.
Right.
Pick the lane.
You go from hating a job to hating what else you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And that happens to a lot of new investors. They're like, oh, I saw this guy on Instagram and he's making $25,000 a month. I got to do that too. But I don't like it. Like, what's the point? You stay in your job.
Sell widgets through Amazon. I don't like doing it. People that do that, they make a lot of money different ways. You're like, it doesn't feel right for you.
Yeah. No, it's got to feel right. Otherwise you're likely not going to do it for any type of, for any extended period of time. You burn out because this is not easy. It's not easy.
Not at all. No, even the guy's doing well. Right. So what problems did you run into? What kind of, obstacles did you have to overcome along the way?
Yeah. And I had a coach, right? I had people helping me.
Right. Well, that's important too, right? Find a mentor, find a coach. Don't do it alone.
Find a mentor, find a coach, find somebody that's doing it now and didn't do it like 10 or 15 years ago and is just selling courses or their mentorship.
Right, exactly. There's always a reason why they're doing that, right? They don't own real estate anymore. They used to own real estate. Now they're selling courses. You wonder why they're not doing real estate anymore. No.
And that's important because you have to make sure that the person is active. And then you're going to make mistakes. I mean, you have to own that, right? I mean, I had a coach and I made a bunch of mistakes on that first house. And then you just have to make sure that you acknowledge those mistakes and learn from it, right? Like you have to embrace it. You have to embrace it and then make sure that it doesn't happen again. Like with the mistakes I made on house number 1, I'll never make again. And then to the point where now I have a system that's so dialed in where even if I make a mistake or something negative happens, which it will, it's just the nature of the business and people, I know how to handle it. Right.
Right.
And then
And
I
they're
have
probably
someone
not
I
big
can go to.
mistakes anymore, right? They're smaller mistakes. They're things that happen in the deal. What are the kind of things you ran into in the first deal?
The first deal was there was a ton of miscommunication or multiple communication because like the buyer, so I normally have the seller was living in the house. So the seller would walk through my buyers, right? And be like, hey, just walk them through. And they're having these conversations about, well, I'll fix this, this, and this. And it never got back to me. So it ended up costing me, a couple things in the house, went south. And I had to fix them. So I ended up costing me a few $1,000s, to replace some appliances and some air conditioning stuff. And it was just, there was no communication, and that's on me. Like, it's not anybody's fault but me. So that was a big mistake there. And then, just really not knowing what the rules were, right? Like I was supposed to get a rental license for one of my houses. I didn't know that.
Like a town license.
Like a town license. And really what it is, the village wants to come out and just collect their fee and make sure everything's crime free. And I didn't get
New Jersey, you got to register your units too. If you have a 4-family house, you got to register it. They want to know if you're there. Sometimes some of them have vacant laws. So if the property's vacant, you got to tell the town and ordinances and stuff. But yeah, that's an important thing. If you're in real estate, well, if you're in business in general, and I speak about this all the time, you better go learn the local ordinances, because you can't say, oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't realize that. You can't do that. So would that cost you some fines? You had to pay some extra money? You could, right?
Yeah. No, it was, well, again, because I didn't know, I had already taken possession of the house. The seller was already out. My buyer was in the house. And then the inspector comes out and flagged a bunch of items. Like, you got to fix this, this, and this.
You're like, what?
And it's on me. The seller was out.
Right.
So I had to fix it. Right.
Right.
So now that's
because normally you wouldn't get like a CO and stuff like that until you close, right? We can get a final inspection from the town.
Well, here's the thing too, is I actually had an inspection done on this property. So I hired my own private inspector, and then the village came out, or the city came out, they did their own inspection, and, they flagged a bunch of, it was minor stuff. It didn't break the bank. It was just a pain in the neck, and I had to get it done. Now I have it written into all my agreements, and whatever town I'm in, because some towns, they don't care. You don't need a license.
Right.
I always call them and be like, hey, I'm going to buy this property. What do I need to do, if anything, before I put a renter in there? Because even though I'm doing this on a rent to own, they still consider it a lease.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And if you did have to evict them and you don't have the proper licensing, it's always an Achilles heel.
Totally. Totally. Yeah.
So what was the worst deal you ever did?
Probably.
I've been doing this so long, so hopefully maybe you have none, but
yeah. And, I'd say it was one where the buyers, we haven't really, and I should have not ever picked them in hindsight. They're still waiting to get their loan. It'll probably all work out, but it was a situation where they knew how to work the system. Yeah. And, even though we have this agreement where it's lease to own, it's rent to own, they gave their down payment. I mean, they really took it to another level in terms of, I spoke to my attorney, I'm going to call the county on you. I'm going to call they were playing the rental victim, right? Which can't take away their rights. You can't take away their rights.
No,
so
not at all.
It probably wasn't a good partnership for us, but we're gonna get through it. And I might have been a little bit overzealous on that deal to get them in the house, because I was trying to get the house sold, because the clock was ticking for me.
Got it.
The seller.
There's always pressure from that.
So yeah, you have to make sure that you stick to your ideal client. That would be my advice. Sometimes I've gotten away from that.
Yeah, and it always comes back to bite you sometimes, right?
Every time.
Yeah. I was looking at a deal for a client. It was the attorney, obviously, on the deal. So he and his 3 buddies, they found this house nearby. It wasn't a house. Well, it was 3 houses, and there were 2 side by side. So there were what they call, not even duplex, split down the middle. So there were 6 units, or they might have been up and down, but there were 3 buildings, 6 units, right? and the rents were all undervalued, were low for the market. He hadn't raised the rents in years. So they go walking through with the owner, he's a kitchen guy. He does construction, whatever. He's getting out, he's selling these things. And they were in pretty good shape. They were renovated and everything. So they had these conversations with the tenants. Like, if we buy the property, we're gonna have to raise the rent, not up to full market, but we got to raise it a little bit so we can cover it. Oh, no problem. He hasn't raised the rent in a long time. Well, they didn't do their due diligence. It wasn't my responsibility. They didn't call the town. Turns out this town had rent control and the tenants knew it. So as soon as they purchased the building, they sent them these notices to raise the rent. They get a letter back from an attorney who says, this my client said they can only raise it, the CPI, and it was 2.9% at the time, or whatever. Yeah. They're 20% under market. And now these guys bought it with doing their calculations that the cash flow would be higher. And they're screwed. And they eventually sold the buildings, but it was a nightmare. It was just a nightmare. So,
that's way worse than my divorce deal, for sure.
Yeah. Well, because you know why? Because they were guys who bought some real estate together and they had some businesses and they didn't really pick a lane. They bought some different things all the time. Some of them worked out, some of them didn't. But I think the way you're doing is you're becoming a specialist. Won't use the word expert, right? It's always dangerous, but you're learning your type of deal, your type of buyer. You learn how to recognize it. I think that's why your advice is good as to picking a lane, because then you can spend your time learning how to syndicate an apartment building, learning how to do seller financing, learning how to fix and flip and what to recognize. Because then when you look at a property, you know what the flags are, the red flags are, and the issues are, or what looks like a good opportunity, right?
Yeah, 100%. You nailed it, Mitch. And I think ultimately, for me, like I love this business. I love real estate. My goal here is to build this business and automate it so that I can step away from it, right? And maybe work 4 to 5 hours a week in it and empower my team to make the decision. And that's cool. I never thought I would build a business, but there's some other things I'm looking at. I'm looking at, buying into other businesses and doing other types of investing. And again, you need time to do that, right? So if I have, 80% of my time in this, I have to make sure that I'm putting the right systems and people in place to do that. It just takes time and commitment. Like I said, you can do something like that in, 3, 4, 5 years. You just and that goes by quick. I mean, we talked about how quick the kids grow up. I mean, the last few years have flown by.
Yeah. Now, if you step back from the business, who's doing the finding the deals, the closing the deals? I mean, at some point they all get sold if there's no more deals going in the pipeline and the cash flow stops.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why it's critical to find that person who's ultimately going to take it over or be the acquisitions leader. And, I've made a few cracks at it. I'm not quitting, but I've got, we constantly have
it's only been a couple of years, right?
Yeah, it's I'm in no rush, but I can't be the one forever, right? I need to have more than one person, and there's plenty of people out there who are capable. There's going to be folks that I can personally mentor and teach them how to do this, and then they'll be the one.
Right. But it's really become a business. You got to operate it as a business. You got to think strategically. You got to plan ahead. You got to do your cash flow analysis. You got to figure out, okay, these deals are coming off the books then, and these deals are going on the books then, and we got these people waiting to buy, and right. So it's the whole structure.
That's right. And that's the part I don't necessarily like, but it's a necessary evil. I mean, I like doing the deals. I like mentoring people. I like coaching. I love talking to people like you, Mitch, and doing podcasting. Right. And I mean, it's fun, right?
I love
it's
it.
Fun.
Wish I could make a living doing it. It's hard. It's hard. We're not Joe Rogan or, Dax Shepard, and we're going to make deals with Spotify. I mean, to me, it's content marketing. I'm talking to guys like you. We're connecting, sharing good ideas, and people hear you and they want to work with you and learn about real estate. People hear me. And if they're in New Jersey, they may need legal work and legal help and stuff like that. But it's, if I could do this, full time where I'm interviewing people and putting out, I would do it, but I have no idea how to monetize it.
And that brings us to a point too, as you asked about, starting a business. I mean, if you don't have your legal stuff handled, I mean, I see a lot of investors who are buying stuff, but getting LLCs on the internet and getting the operating agreements and all that stuff, which just makes me cringe. And I'm sure it makes you cringe as well. I mean, this is not a step to skip. Like if you're going to chintz somewhere, pick something else. Like do not screw up the entity formation and the agreements, because, as you could tell many stories of when it comes time to sell the business, or, something goes wrong and your agreements, your entity is incorrect. I mean, you tell me what happens.
It's a bad time to find out.
Yeah.
Look, if everything goes well, you probably don't even need agreements, right? It's really when things go south. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the problem. If you're doing it just yourself, you and your wife, and you're buying a house and you're getting a mortgage and then you're fixing it up a little bit and then you're selling it, you should have a LLC and stuff for liability reasons. But do you need all that paperwork? Probably not. But a lot of people put together deals with not just all their own money. You have a little bit of a complex deal. You have a seller on one side, you have a buyer on another side, you got cash flow, you got risks, things like that. Other people may be buying and flipping and they're bringing in people to invest. I'm sure at some point you're probably doing it too, because you get followers and people that are coaching with you and they're like, hey, Brian, I'd really like to invest in a deal. I don't know what to do. And you'd say, okay, well, we got this going on maybe. So, but yeah, if you're not papered, you really can run into a lot of, it's just a precarious way to do business. And it's not just the real estate business. People do things on a handshake. They watch, who's the guy who does the business show on CNBC, the Prophet, Marcus Lemonis.
Yeah.
Right. Now just for people listening, like he's worth like $1 billion. Okay. So he's got a lot of room for error. And he goes and he does things on handshakes. He meets you and he sizes you up and he thinks Brian's a nice guy. And all right, fine. He writes a check. Now, sometimes he gets screwed, but he can afford to lose $500,000. It doesn't change his life. Most people are not in that position.
Nope.
And to save, by the way, you don't really save that much. Going to LegalZoom, setting up your LLC versus coming to somebody like me, you probably save a few $100, if that. Yeah. And I see them wrong all the time. Totally. Or they didn't get the proper licenses, or they didn't file it here. They didn't pay this fee. Yeah. And it's definitely problematic. Or the lease. I don't know about, Illinois, but in New Jersey, there's specific requirements in a tenant's lease that you have to have certain language, or you can't collect late fees, unpaid utilities, legal fees, court costs. You're stuck. And then if you go to court and the guy shows up with his rent and he goes, oh, well, I'm not going to accept this. You got to pay my legal fees. Judge's going to throw it out. And even these standard leases on the internet that say they're New Jersey based, they're wrong. I see them all the time. They're completely wrong.
Yeah. So you got to find somebody local. You got to find somebody local who's done it before,
right? Who knows the law. And there's some of them are little adjustments, but all right. So let's talk about how people can find you. The podcast is BKW Property.
The podcast is the website is bkwpropertysolutions.com. That's my website. Okay. The podcast is, which you were on, was A Better Way with Real Estate. And, people can go to the website or you can email me. I'll give my email. It's brian@bkwpropertysolutions.com. If you want to learn about this business or how to get started in it, I'd be more than happy to, give you some advice. I love it. I love to help people get out of their W-2 if real estate is the lane, right?
Yeah, exactly. Get out of W-2 any way they can. I mean, some people, by the way, should stay with their W-2, but there's plenty of people who shouldn't be entrepreneurs. But are you on LinkedIn also?
I am on LinkedIn. It's Brian O'Neill.
There's probably no other Brian O'Neills on LinkedIn. I would assume, right?
I wouldn't. Not with an
uncommon name.
Not with a capital N and 2 L's. I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And an apostrophe.
But yeah, so people can interact with you, coach with you, learn from you, see what you're doing.
Yeah, they can learn from me. Again, you mentioned we do work with investors. I mean, because there's a lot of people out there that don't want to do what I do, and they just want the returns, right?
Yeah.
So, but again, the main objective is, education. I mean, that's what our show is about. That's what we do with our buyers. That's what we do with our sellers. So I'm happy to give any insight to anyone who reaches out.
Yep. And this episode will probably be out like mid to late March. My episode was out, a couple of weeks ago, I think, on your show?
Yeah. It was a few weeks ago.
Before New Year's?
It was before New Year's. Yeah, it was before New Year's. Absolutely.
Yeah, mid-December. So you check that out. And I can't thank you enough taking some time on a Friday afternoon. It's 4:30 my time. It's 3:30 your time, right?
3:30 and the sun is still out. It's going to be dark soon, right?
Getting dark out here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I'm cutting it. I mean, you're a real estate guy. So your day on a Friday must end like 2:30, 3 o'clock, right? I mean, you just, go home, kick your feet up and not have to do any work because you're a real estate mogul now. That's typically how it works. I can tell you my son's going to be home in about 10 minutes. So all what is going to be happening here at the house soon. So the timing of this is good. He's in 5th grade. Oh yeah. So that is 5th, the last year in elementary by you?
It is. Yeah. It's K through 5 and then, junior high is, what do they do at K through 6 there? No. We're Jersey? K through 5 and then 6th through 8th is middle school. 9th through 12th is high school. Right.
I do not miss going to parent night. First of all, now parent night on Zoom is the best thing you've ever seen, right? But with the kids, it's just wait till you get to the middle school or even the high school when they give you 3 minutes to go from one teacher to the next at night. It's just a nightmare. You're seeing your friends. Hey, Brian, how you doing? Bumping into people in the hallways. And then it's like, they do their whole day in like an hour and a half or something like that.
Yeah. Not looking forward to that.
I don't miss it. Well, enjoy it. Cause like you said, it goes real fast. My 2 are in college. My 3rd one next year, we'll be looking at schools, and my son's starting his job in June with a company in Indianapolis.
Oh, nice. Great city. Great city.
Yeah.
Good for real estate.
Oil Stadium. Yeah. Maybe he'll get into real estate. He's a tech guy. So he's working for an AI company.
Okay.
We'll see. But if he starts making some money, maybe I'll connect you guys and you can do some deals together.
Awesome. Love it.
All right, Brian, thanks. I can't thank you enough.
It's great to be on. Thanks, Mitch. Good seeing you again.
If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, on Amazon Music, and many of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhackerlaw.com. The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted and produced by me, Mitch Beinhacker. If you'd like more information about my legal services, you can find me on social media or visit my website at beinhackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.